Welcome back to Fear Begins. If you've ever been home alone on Halloween night, you know how silence can sound different, the kind that feels alive. Tonight's story is one of those nights. Before we start, take a second to lock your doors, dim the lights, and hit subscribe so you never miss the next true encounter that will make your heart race. This isn't a legend or a rumor. It's what happened to me one October 31st. I didn't believe in haunted houses or curses or any of that. I just wanted a quiet evening, popcorn, and a movie marathon. Instead, I learned how quickly comfort can turn into terror when the world outside your window seems to disappear. Halloween always felt harmless where I lived. Kids in costumes, porch lights glowing amber, the smell of pumpkins and wet leaves. That year, I'd just moved into a small rental on the edge of town. It was a one-story house with creaky floors and a view of the woods that looked peaceful during the day but endless at night. My friends invited me to parties, but I wanted a night to myself. I turned off the porch light early, figuring no trick-or-treaters would bother climbing the hill for one more piece of candy. Around 9:30, the wind picked up. The kind that makes the siding breathe. I brewed tea, wrapped myself in a blanket, and settled onto the couch. The movie was halfway through when the power blinked once, then steadied. Nothing unusual until I noticed the house didn't go completely quiet afterward. There was a faint tapping, like knuckles brushing glass. At first, I thought it was tree branches. But the branches near the living room window were trimmed weeks earlier. I muted the TV, the tapping stopped. I told myself not to overthink it and pressed play again. 2 minutes later, the sound came back. 3 slow taps, a pause, then one more, softer. Almost polite, I froze. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away down the hill. Trick-or-treaters were long gone. Still, I walked to the window and lifted one corner of the curtain. The yard light from across the street barely reached my driveway. Nothing, no movement, no shapes. I tried to laugh it off, but my chest stayed tight. Back on the couch, I noticed my phone screen light up on the coffee table. No service. That was strange, my signal never dropped here. I lifted it toward the ceiling, stepped near the window again. One bar flickered, then vanished. Outside, the leaves rustled once, sharply like someone shifting weight. I said out loud, probably a raccoon, just to hear a human voice in the room. My own voice sounded small. Another sound answered. Not from the window this time, but from the kitchen, the faint click of a cabinet hinge. The kind that pops when wood swells with humidity. Except I hadn't been in the kitchen since dinner, and that cabinet only opened when pulled. I stood, every step deliberate, telling myself I'd find a reason, a draft, maybe the cat. Except I didn't own a cat. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon from the candle I'd blown out hours ago. In the dark, the outlines of chairs looked like crouched figures. I ran my fingers along the counter until they touched the cabinet door, closed, perfectly shut. That should have comforted me, but it didn't. Because from somewhere under the floor came a muted thump, like something dropped on dirt. I backed up, heartbeat stuttering. Old houses make noises, I told myself. Pipes, settling wood. But I couldn't shake the rhythm of that sound, too steady, too deliberate. The air felt thicker now. I decided to turn on every light. I crossed to the hall switch, nothing. The light stayed off. The power hadn't gone out entirely. The TV still hummed softly. But the bulbs in the hallway, kitchen, and porch refused to glow. Then came the soft chime of the doorbell. I froze again, halfway between the hall and living room. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard it hurt. Nobody should have been outside. I'd turned the porch light off. The path was steep, and the bell hadn't worked when I moved in. I took one breath, another, and whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. I leaned closer to the door, listening. The only sound was the wind through the trees. Then, faintly, the bell chimed again, but slower this time, as if whoever pressed it wanted to be sure I heard. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera app, switched to the front porch feed. The camera showed static for a moment before catching a glimpse of movement, a shadow slipping past the edge of the lens. Tall, thin, shoulders slouched forward. I blinked and it was gone. I wanted to call the police, but the phone still showed no service. I thought about driving to town, but that meant stepping outside, and every instinct screamed, "Stay put." The tapping started again on the kitchen window now. Slow, rhythmic like before. The tea mug rattled where it sat. I crept toward the kitchen doorframe, barely breathing. Through the sliver of curtain I could see only my own reflection and the faint orange glow of the streetlight beyond the trees. Then, behind my reflection, a shape moved closer to the glass, enough that I could make out the impression of fingers trailing along the pane. My breath caught. The shape withdrew. Silence returned, thick and heavy. I did what anyone terrified might do. I hid. I slipped into the pantry, crouched behind the shelves, and pressed my ear to the cool plaster wall. For a few minutes, nothing. Then the front door creaked, as if pressure leaned against it from outside. A second later, a soft knock, 3 times, matching the earlier rhythm on the glass. My mind ran through explanations. Pranksters, a lost trick-or-treater, someone testing the wrong house. But the air carried a whisper of something else, a faint humming, tuneless, almost like a child trying to remember a melody. I whispered to myself, "It's just wind." The humming stopped. Then, a voice. Low. Calm. So close I couldn't tell if it came through the door or from the back of my head. "Why'd you turn the lights off?" I clapped a hand over my mouth. My eyes burned. For a second I thought I'd imagined it. But then something brushed the outside wall, a dragging sound that moved from the front door toward the kitchen window. I stayed there until my legs went numb. When I finally built the courage to move, the digital clock on the stove read 3:17 a.m. The night had gone completely still. I reached for the curtain and lifted it a few inches. The yard was empty. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the floor, phone in my lap, waiting for daylight. When the signal returned at dawn, I called my neighbor to ask if anyone had been out last night. He said no, and that his own doorbell, the one connected to the same old wiring, had rung around midnight too. Twice. That afternoon, I tested mine. The button was still broken. No power, no sound, nothing. Every Halloween since, I leave the lights on and the TV loud even if I'm not home. I tell myself I imagined it. But each year, around midnight, the porch camera records the same thing. A blur of motion by the window. You ever get that feeling that your house knows you're alone? Like the walls breathe a little louder, the air moves differently, and every sound feels just a bit too intentional. That's how that night started for me. Halloween again. Not a party, not a movie night. Just me, home alone, with rain tapping against the windows like a nervous heartbeat. I told myself I didn't care. I was too old for costumes, too tired for company. But deep down, I think I stayed home because I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't scared of being alone anymore. Turns out, I was wrong. It started small. It always does. The TV flickered once, then twice, then went black, even though the lights stayed on. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen. Just me, sitting there with a half-empty mug of cocoa and the faint sound of thunder miles away. Then I saw it. Not in the room, behind me in the reflection. A shape, blurry, still. My brain went into overdrive trying to explain it. Maybe a coat hanging weird or the shadow of a chair. But when I turned around, the chair was empty. The wall was bare. Nothing there. Still, my skin crawled. I turned the TV off completely, stood up and decided to check the doors. It's something I do when I get uneasy, just to reassure myself that everything's locked up. I went room to room, touching each latch, each handle. Front door, back door, windows, all sealed. I even peeked through the blinds to the porch light. The rain had picked up, a heavy curtain of silver streaks pouring over the steps. No movement, except the porch light flickered, not a power surge. Just a quick, deliberate pulse, like someone had walked right under it. I froze. Waited, nothing. Motion sensor, I whispered to myself, trying to laugh it off. Just the rain. But I knew that light didn't trip for rain. Still, I told myself to stop overthinking. I went back to the couch, tried to scroll through my phone, but Wi-Fi was gone. No bars. The storm, maybe. Then the phone buzzed once. Just a single notification. Unknown number. The message said, "You left your door unlocked." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Every sound in the house sharpened. The creak of old wood, the whisper of wind through the vents. I looked up slowly. The front door was about 15 feet away. Still shut, still bolted, at least I thought it was. I stood, heart hammering, and started toward it, step by step. Careful, quiet. When I got close enough to see the lock, my chest went tight. The deadbolt was halfway turned, not fully open, not fully locked, just in between. I reached out to twist it, and that's when I heard it. 3 slow knocks from the other side. Not loud, not demanding. Just soft enough that it sounded like whoever it was didn't want to wake anyone else up, except there wasn't anyone else here. I backed away, phone in hand, but the message thread was gone. The number he deleted, like it never existed. The knocks came again. 3. Then silence. My heart was thudding so hard it felt like it echoed in the room. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I even say? Hey, someone texted me about my door and now they're knocking politely. So instead I did the dumbest thing I could have done. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the rain pouring down. But when I pulled away, there was another sound. From inside the house this time, a whisper. Soft. Dragging. Like someone repeating words they'd just heard. "You left your door unlocked." I spun around. The living room was empty, but I swear I saw the curtain by the hallway sway like someone had just brushed past it. My throat went dry. I grabbed the closest thing I could, a heavy candle jar, and took a slow step forward. The floor creaked under my weight, then again. But this time it wasn't me. The second creak came from behind me. I turned fast. The front door was still closed, but the deadbolt was now fully unlocked. I ran for it, twisted it shut, shoved the chain lock into place, and right as I did, something tapped the window to my left. 3 times, not like rain, like fingers. I backed away, staring at that glass, waiting for another tap. The light outside flickered again, 1 pulse, and in that half-second of light, I saw something move past the window. Not a person, not an animal, just a shadow, tall and narrow, gliding by too smoothly to be walking. Then, silence. Nothing moved. No rain, no sound. The house held its breath like it was listening. I stayed there, frozen until I heard the whisper again. This time closer, coming from the hallway. "You left your door unlocked." I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't work. Every instinct in my body told me not to go down that hallway, but my feet moved anyway. The closer I got, the colder the air felt. I reached the end of the hall, and there, just barely visible, was my bedroom door, wide open. I hadn't left it open. Inside, everything was pitch black except for one thing. The faint glow of my phone screen. It was sitting on my bed. I hadn't brought it there. When I stepped closer, the screen lit up on its own. The same unknown number. One new message. You should have stayed on the couch. Then the phone went black again. I bolted. Straight down the hall, past the living room, past the still locked front door, to the kitchen. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the candle. The sound of glass shattering filled the silence like a gunshot. Then, footsteps. Not running, not sneaking, just walking. Slowly, measured. From the hall toward me, each step made the air thicker. I backed into the corner by the sink, grabbed a kitchen knife, and waited. The footsteps stopped just before the doorway. Silence again, then a whisper so close it brushed my ear. Lock it this time. Every light in the house flickered at once. A blinding flash, and then everything went out. Darkness. When the lights came back on a few seconds later, the doorway was empty, the phone was gone, and the deadbolt perfectly locked. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the corner of my kitchen until sunrise, every sound magnified, every breath catching. When morning came, I checked every door, every window. Everything was still sealed, but the message history was back on my phone. And the last text said, "See you next Halloween." I moved out the next week. You ever wake up in the middle of the night, absolutely sure someone's standing in the dark, watching you? That's how it began for me Halloween night. The one night I promised myself I wouldn't let my imagination win again. I'd been working late, editing videos until my eyes blurred, and by the time I noticed the clock, it was 2:17 a.m. The house was dead quiet. Too quiet. Usually I can hear the hum of the fridge, the faint ticking of the wall clock. Normal stuff that reminds you you're not alone in total silence. But that night, nothing. Just my own heartbeat. Then came the knock, not at the door. Not even on a wall. It was on the window. 3 light taps. I froze mid-breath, eyes flicking toward the blinds. My desk lamp cast a pale circle of light, and outside that glow, the rest of the room felt swallowed by shadow. Tap, tap, tap. It came again. Same rhythm, same calmness. The weird thing, I live on the 2nd floor. My chest tightened. I didn't move, didn't even blink. I just listened, hoping, begging that it was a tree branch or the wind. But it was a calm night, no wind. No branches near the window. I forced myself to stand. My legs felt like lead. I took a step closer to the blinds and the tapping stopped. Dead silence. I hesitated, counted to 3, yanked the blinds open. Nothing. Just the faint reflection of my own scared face in the glass. My room, my lamp, my pulse pounding in my ears. I almost laughed. "You're losing it," I whispered. "It's Halloween. Your brain's just playing tricks." I went back to my chair, shut the laptop, and decided to get some sleep. But when I turned toward my bed, my blood ran cold. My bedroom door, the one I'd closed earlier, it was open, not wide, just cracked. Enough that I could see a sliver of the hallway, completely dark. I told myself I'd probably left it that way. Except I remembered hearing it click shut when I sat down to work. My stomach twisted. I picked up my phone to check the time again. 2:23 a.m. That's when the phone screen flickered. Then, for half a second, I saw something in the front camera reflection behind me. A shape, human-sized, standing by the doorway. I spun around so fast my chair toppled. The hallway was empty. but the door was fully open now. I grabbed my phone flashlight and pointed it down the hall. Nothing but shadows. I took a step forward, my heart hammering against my ribs. Another step. I could hear every tiny creak under my feet. Then, faintly, from the living room came a soft shuffle. Someone moving. I held my breath. The sound stopped. I tried calling out, "Hello?" But my voice came out cracked and thin. No response. I should have called someone. Should have stayed in my room and locked the door. But curiosity, or maybe stupidity, won. I crept down the hallway, each step slower than the last. The house looked different in the dark, longer, quieter, like it was holding its breath too. When I reached the living room, the first thing I noticed was the front door wide open. Rain blowing in across the floor, except it hadn't been raining earlier. I walked toward it slowly, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The doormat was soaked. Muddy footprints led inward, not out. That's when every instinct in me screamed to run. I turned to grab my keys off the counter, but the keys weren't there. They were on the floor, by the couch, right next to a wet footprint. I couldn't breathe. I backed away, eyes darting to every corner, expecting movement. Then, from somewhere behind the kitchen, I heard it. A faint exhale. Someone was there. I killed my flashlight instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. I pressed my back against the wall, barely daring to breathe. The sound came again, slow, deliberate breathing, closer. Then a voice, low, calm, almost whispering. I didn't mean to wake you. Every hair on my neck stood up. I bolted, ran straight for the stairs. Behind me, footsteps, quick, heavy. I slammed my bedroom door shut, locked it, and grabbed the chair to wedge it under the knob. My whole body was shaking. For a moment, silence. Then the knob turned, slowly, gently, testing the lock. I backed away, staring at it, every muscle frozen. The sound stopped. And then, a single knock on the door, 3 times, soft, measured, then a whisper, right through the wood. You shouldn't have looked. I didn't move. Didn't even blink. Just listened. Minutes passed. Nothing. I waited another 10, then finally worked up the courage to call the police. No signal. My phone showed no service, just like in every nightmare where help is impossible. I turned the phone flashlight back on and noticed something that made my chest cave in. On my nightstand, my laptop was open. I hadn't opened it. The screen glowed faintly. A document already typed. 1 sentence. You're not home alone. I shut it so fast it nearly cracked. My breathing was too loud now, too frantic. I sat there on the floor, back to the bed, trying to listen for anything else, but all I could hear was my pulse. Then, a click, the lock turning. I jumped up, shoved harder against the door, but the knob was moving. The chair legs scraping against the wood floor. Whoever was out there was strong. I screamed, kicked the chair tighter under the handle, but it didn't stop. The door shook with one hard hit, then another. Then silence again, and from under the door, a piece of paper slid through. My hands were trembling when I picked it up. It was damp, the edges wrinkled. One line was written across it, shaky handwriting, "Don't check the mirror." My eyes darted to the dresser mirror across the room. The reflection looked normal. Empty room. Me, pale and terrified. Then the lights flickered, just once. And when they came back, there was a second figure in the reflection. Standing behind me, I spun around. No one there, but the chair was gone. The door, wide open. I ran out of that house barefoot, didn't stop until I was halfway down the street. I called the cops from a neighbor's porch. They searched the place top to bottom. No signs of anyone else ever being there. No footprints. No fingerprints, nothing. They said maybe it was stress. Maybe I imagined it, but I know what I saw. And when I came back the next morning to grab my things, the mirror on my dresser was cracked straight down the middle. In the center of the crack, scrawled in marker, "You ever get that feeling that something in your house has changed, but you can't tell what?" That's what happened to me the night after I moved into the new place, Halloween again. I wasn't planning to celebrate, too much unpacking, too tired to care. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels staged, like everyone decided at the same time to pretend they weren't home. Around 9, the trick-or-treaters had stopped coming. The candy ball sat half full by the door. I turned off the porch light, locked up, and finally let myself sink onto the couch. That's when the TV switched itself on. Static. Just static. Loud and sudden. I flinched so hard I spilled my drink. The remote was on the coffee table, untouched. I muted the sound, but the image didn't change. White snow across the screen, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then, buried in the static, came a whisper. It wasn't words at first, just rhythm, soft, careful, like someone talking from very far away. I leaned forward, and that's when it clicked. It was my name 12 times, drawn out slow. The air in the room thickened. I grabbed the remote, hit power. The screen went black. My own reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and pale. I told myself it was interference. Maybe a signal from someone else's baby monitor. Logical, reasonable. But logic doesn't stop your heartbeat from sprinting. I turned on the lamp beside me. Light filled the room, warm and steady. I breathed out until I noticed the window. The blinds were open. I never leave them open. Outside, the streetlight buzzed. Empty road, empty sidewalk. Except for one thing. A single trick-or-treat bucket sat in the middle of the street. Orange plastic, smiling pumpkin face. It hadn't been there earlier. I stood, walked closer to the window. The bucket didn't move, didn't blow away. Just sat there like it was waiting. I told myself not to open the door. So, of course, I did. The night air was cold and sharp. I stepped out just enough to look both ways. The street stretched silent. No cars. No voices. Then the bucket rocked once, a soft scrape against the pavement. I froze. It rocked again, tipping slightly toward me. My brain screamed that it had to be the wind, but the trees weren't moving. Not a single leaf stirred. I stepped back and shut the door hard. Locked it. Double-checked the latch. Inside again, everything looked normal. I turned off the lamp, told myself to sleep. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. "You forgot your candy." I stared at it, throat tight. I didn't answer. Another text came. "Don't worry. I brought it inside." Something clinked in the kitchen. Metal on wood. I held my breath. The sound came again, soft, irregular, like someone gently setting down handfuls of small objects. I crept toward the kitchen doorway. The hall light flickered as I moved. My footsteps barely made a sound, but each one felt too loud. The kitchen light was off. I reached in, flipped the switch, candy all over the floor. Tiny chocolate bars, lollipops, bright wrappers glinting under the light. I hadn't bought that kind. Then, behind the candy, I noticed footprints, small, muddy, bare. They led from the back door straight to the hallway, then stopped halfway like whoever left them just disappeared. My pulse hammered. I reached for the door handle. It was cold, damp, unlocked. I locked it, turned the deadbolt, and backed away fast. My eyes darted to the candy again. Every wrapper was perfectly sealed, except one. A single chocolate bar lay open in the center of the pile, the foil peeled back. Inside, the paper was blank, no brand, no label, just a message scrawled across the wrapper in black marker. Trick or treat. My knees almost gave out. I kicked the candy aside and grabbed my phone to call someone. Anyone. No signal again. That's when the knocking started. Not at the front door this time, from inside the house. Slow, rhythmic knocks like knuckles on hollow wood. I spun toward the sound. It was coming from the hallway closet. 3 knocks. Then silence. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe. Another knock. This time softer, almost hesitant. I backed away, but the phone in my hand lit up by itself, flashlight flickering. The screen displayed a new text. "You can let me out now." My fingers went numb. I should have run. I should have bolted out the door and never looked back. But instead, like a fool, I stepped closer to the closet. The door handle twitched. Once, then again, and then a small voice, childlike, almost playful, spoke through the crack. "Did you like my candy?" I stumbled back, heart slamming. "Who's there?" No answer. "Hello?" Nothing. Then the handle stopped moving. The silence after was worse than the knocking. I crept forward again, every instinct screaming, "Don't." The air near the door felt colder, heavier. I reached out slowly, hand shaking, and touched the knob. Ice cold, I whispered, "If this is a prank, it's not funny." Still nothing. I counted to 3 and yanked the door open. Empty, just coats, boxes, darkness. No child, no candy. I exhaled shakily and laughed under my breath, half relief, half disbelief. I turned to walk away, and the door slammed behind me so hard the walls shook. I jumped, spun around. The handle didn't move this time. It was locked from the inside. Then came a faint giggle from somewhere beyond the wood. Not loud. Just enough to freeze me in place. I backed down the hall, grabbing my jacket and keys. I didn't even put on shoes. I just ran. Out the front door, into the night. The street was still empty. The pumpkin bucket was gone. I stayed in my car until sunrise. When I finally went back inside, the candy was gone too. Every piece. Floor spotless. Closet door wide open again. I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion, maybe a nightmare. But that afternoon, while unpacking boxes, I found something that made my stomach drop. Under a pile of clothes sat that same orange pumpkin bucket. Inside it were my house keys, and on a scrap of foil at the bottom, written in the same marker, "See you next Halloween." It started with the sound of breathing, not mine. I was sitting on the couch, Halloween night, halfway through a horror movie marathon. Outside, the wind was pushing dry leaves against the window, the kind of whispering sound that already sets your nerves on edge. I had just turned down the volume when I heard it. Soft, ragged breathing coming from somewhere behind me. For a second, I thought it was the movie, but the screen was frozen, buffering again, and the sound didn't stop. It was slow, shallow, like someone trying not to be heard. I remember my eyes darting toward the hallway mirror, half expecting to see someone standing behind me. Nothing. Just the reflection of the living room, dim light, flickering candles, shadows shifting with every gust outside. "Okay," I whispered to myself, forcing a shaky laugh. "It's just the wind," or my own breathing bouncing back. But then it came again, closer. That's when I muted everything, and the house went too quiet. You ever notice how silence isn't really silent? There's always a hum, the fridge, the clock, something. But at that moment, even that faint hum disappeared. It was like the house itself was holding its breath, and then one soft exhale. Behind me, my body went cold. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. It felt like if I did, whatever it was would know I'd heard it. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the remote. I forced myself to breathe slow, quiet, pretending nothing was wrong. That's when the TV unpaused itself, no remote click. No button press. The frozen horror movie started playing again on its own. Only now the sound was distorted, voices stretched and hollow like they were echoing through a tunnel. The main character on screen was whispering, "Don't look behind you." I swear I stopped breathing. It felt like the air in the room had thickened. My skin prickled all over. I stood up, trying to keep my eyes forward, trying not to show fear. And then I heard movement, a soft scrape on the floorboards, like bare feet. I turned. Nothing. The couch was empty, the hallway still. The only thing I noticed, the front door. It was open, just a crack, wide enough for the cold wind to slip through. I hadn't opened it. My mind scrambled for logic. Maybe I forgot to lock it. Maybe it wasn't closed all the way. I walked over slowly, every creak of the floor sounding too loud in the stillness. I reached for the handle, but then I saw something. Fingerprints smudged across the inside of the door. Greasy, dark, like someone had been pressing their hand there, trying not to make noise. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I locked the door, turned every bolt, then ran to the kitchen for the knife drawer. Empty. Every single one gone. That's when I realized the back door might still be unlocked. I walked through the kitchen, my eyes darting to every window. My reflection looked pale, ghost-like in the glass. The wind outside picked up, and a branch scraped against the wall, sharp, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. When I reached the back door, I saw it was wide open. The curtain was fluttering. The dark outside looked endless. I wanted to run, but something made me stop. Muddy footprints on the tile. Bare feet, leading into the house. My throat went dry. The footprints trailed toward the basement door, and it was open just an inch. I grabbed my phone. Dead. Not low battery. Completely black. And then I heard it. The breathing again. But now it was from the basement. Slow, steady, deliberate. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. It was like fear had nailed me to the floor. I just stared at the basement door, waiting, listening. Then a voice, low, whispering, "Why'd you lock me out?" I swear it was my own voice, the exact tone, the same shaky edge, like someone was mimicking me. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. It hit the floor with a crash that felt deafening. The whispering stopped. Silence again, then footsteps. Coming up the basement stairs, slow, dragging. The door creaked wider. I could see only black beyond it. The air coming up from the basement was damp and cold, like breathing from something ancient. I ran, straight to the front door, yanked it open even though I knew I'd locked it seconds ago. It was unlocked again. I sprinted out into the night, barefoot, freezing. The whole neighborhood was dark, Halloween lights off, porches empty. I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the streetlights. Then I looked back. My front door was still open. Someone was standing there, not moving, just watching. The porch light flickered, and I saw myself standing in the doorway, smiling. Then the light went out. I don't remember running the rest of the way. The next thing I recall is waking up in my car, engine still running, parked 2 blocks away. It was nearly 4 a.m. My house looked normal from a distance, door shut, lights off. When I finally got the courage to go back the next morning, nothing seemed touched. No footprints, no fingerprints. The knife drawer, full again. But on the TV screen, frozen in static, there was a single frame of video paused, a still shot of me, sitting on the couch from the night before. Only I wasn't looking at the TV. I was staring directly at the camera, and behind me, just barely visible in the dark, was another version of me, standing perfectly still. A hand on my shoulder. The file was time-stamped 11:59 p.m., Halloween night. I've tried deleting it. The file keeps coming back. Every time I turn the TV on, even if it's a different input, even if it's unplugged and plugged back in, the same still image appears. Me, watching. It was supposed to be an easy favor. Feed the dog, lock up, stay the night so the place didn't look empty on Halloween. The house sat at the edge of the woods, the last mailbox before the road dissolved into dirt. When I pulled up, the sun was already sliding down, turning the tree line into a jagged wall of black. Inside, everything smelled faintly of cedar and something sweet, like apples left too long on a counter. The owner, a friend of a friend, had left a note. Luna likes to sleep in the laundry room. She barks at her reflection sometimes, but she's harmless. That line should have meant nothing. It didn't. Luna was a gray shepherd mix with one blue eye. When I found her, she lifted her head once, then went back to staring at the dark window over her water bowl. Her ears twitched with every creak. I told myself she was just anxious. Big old house, lots of noises. The first hour was fine. I made tea, scrolled my phone, listened to the rain start to patter against the roof. Every so often Luna would bark, just once, a deep warning sound that made the walls seem thinner. Then the power flickered. It came back, but the TV in the corner turned itself on. A black and white home movie flickered across the screen, a family at the same front porch, carving pumpkins. No sound. The people moved too fast, their smiles slightly wrong. I picked up the remote. Dead batteries. I unplugged the cord. The picture stayed on for 2 full seconds before fading. Luna whimpered. I walked to the hallway mirror to check my face. The tea had gone cold in my hand, and heard something that froze me mid-step. Footsteps. But they were matching mine. I stopped. The sound stopped. I took one careful step backward. Another behind me, exactly in sync, half a heartbeat later. The hallway stretched long and narrow. I could see the laundry room door at the end slightly open, light spilling out across the floorboards. Luna, my voice sounded small. A low growl rolled from the laundry room, but Luna was suddenly right next to me, tail tucked, staring the same way I was. The growl hadn't come from her. Something brushed the inside of the laundry room door. A soft knock like fingernails. I backed away, heart hammering so hard it felt like it belonged to someone else. The sound came again, 2 knocks this time, then, very faintly, a whisper, "Let me out." I bolted to the living room, Luna at my heels. I grabbed my keys, my coat, but when I tried the front door, it wouldn't open. The deadbolt spun freely, useless. The metal felt warm. Rain hammered the roof harder. The lights dimmed again. Behind me, the hallway mirror rattled against the wall. When I looked, there was someone in it. Not standing in front of it. Inside it. The figure was blurry, gray, but it moved when I didn't. When I lifted my hand, it stayed perfectly still. When I froze, it waved. That's when Luna started barking. Not at the mirror, but at the ceiling. Above us, the attic door was open. I could see the ladder unfolded halfway down, swinging slightly. I don't remember opening it. The barking stopped. The silence afterward was so sharp, it felt like pressure on my eardrums. Then came the creak of weight on floorboards overhead. I whispered out loud that I'd call for help, even though I knew there was no signal here. It was just something to hear my own voice. The step above me shifted again, closer to the ladder now. Luna bolted under the couch. I backed toward the kitchen. keeping my eyes on the ceiling hatch. Then a whisper, clearer this time, dropped straight down. "Don't leave me up here again." I didn't recognize the voice, but it sounded like it knew me. I threw the back door latch. It opened cleanly, the cold rain spilling in, and I ran outside. My phone finally blinked to life, 1 bar of service, long enough to pull up the flashlight. When I turned back toward the house, every window was glowing with pale yellow light. In each one, I saw a shape standing still. Not one figure, dozens, faint outlines, each facing the glass like they were looking out for someone. Then I realized every shape had the same outline. Mine. I ran until the trees thinned and the road curved toward town. I didn't stop until I saw headlights. A patrol car pulled up beside me. The officer rolled down the window, confused, asked if I was the one who called earlier about a break-in on Miller Lane. I hadn't called anyone. My phone log showed nothing. When we got back to the house, it was dark again. No lights, no ladder, no footprints but mine. The officer checked every room. The only thing that made him frown was the laundry room door. It was nailed shut from the inside. He pried one nail loose and looked in with his flashlight. His face drained of color. He told me to wait outside. A minute later he came out, quiet, pale eyes on the ground. He just said, "You shouldn't stay here." He wouldn't tell me what he saw. I never went back. 2 weeks later, the owner called me, sounding casual, thanking me for helping out. She laughed when I mentioned the mirror in the attic. Said there was no attic in that house. Never had been. Before we hung up, she asked something strange. "By the way, how's Luna?" "She's been missing since the storm last year." The line clicked, and from my porch, the power had gone out again. That's how it always started in this building. First the flicker, then the heavy silence. Like the air itself forgot how to hum. I was the only tenant on the 9th floor who hadn't gone out for Halloween. Everyone else was at the rooftop party. I'd stayed behind to finish an editing job that was already past deadline. The storm outside rattled the windows hard enough to shake the desk lamp. Then the lamp blinked twice and died. For a second I sat there in the dim glow of my laptop screen, convincing myself it was fine. The emergency lights in the hallway kicked in, painting everything with that sick orange color that never feels right, and then I heard it. A soft knock. Not from my door, from inside the wall, 3 short taps. A pause, then 2 more. I froze, trying to tell if it was the pipes or maybe someone moving furniture next door. But no one lived in 9B. It had been empty since the fire last year. I told myself it was rats, old pipes, anything logical. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, a text, "Stop knocking." My stomach twisted. I typed back, "Who is this?" No answer. Another knock. Same rhythm, 3 and 2. The lights in the hall dimmed again, the way they do when the generator stutters. I grabbed a flashlight, opened my door, and stepped into the corridor. The entire floor smelled faintly of smoke, the kind that clings to old wallpaper. At the far end, apartment 9B's door stood open just a crack. "Hello," I called out, hating how my voice echoed back at me. No reply. I walked closer, every step making the floor groan. When I reached the door, I pushed it gently with my foot. It swung open to reveal nothing, an empty room. No furniture, just stripped walls, burn marks tracing up toward the ceiling. My flashlight flickered. For a split second, the beam landed on something scratched into the drywall. 3. The same pattern as the knocks. Behind me, the door creaked shut. I spun around. The hallway was gone. Where the doorway should have been, there was just more wall, blackened and warped. My breathing got fast, ragged. I turned back toward the window. City lights glowed far below, blurred by rain. I tried my phone, no signal, no time display, like it wasn't connected to anything anymore. Then the sound started again. Not knocking this time, whispering. It came from the ceiling, from the corners, from everywhere. Words too fast to understand, like a dozen voices speaking at once. "Stop it!" I yelled. My voice cracked. Silence. Then, a single whisper right beside my ear. "You're late." I stumbled back, hit the wall hard enough to make dust fall from the ceiling. My flashlight rolled away, the beam spinning across the floor until it landed on something shiny, a phone. Not mine. I picked it up. The screen was cracked but still on, showing a video paused at the first frame. My own hallway, my own door. The timestamp read 10:31 p.m., 1 minute from now. I hit play. The video showed me standing exactly where I was, flashlight in hand. Then the screen shook. Something behind me in the frame moved fast. The camera fell, and the video ended in static. My heartbeat filled the silence. From somewhere above, I heard footsteps, deliberate, heavy, crossing the ceiling toward me. Dust sifted down with every step. I ran to the window, tried to open it. Locked. The latch wouldn't budge. I looked back. The ceiling had begun to sag, as if something pressed from the other side. A single flake of plaster broke loose and drifted down. Then a hand pushed through. Gray, thin with fingers too long, nails blackened. It reached, feeling the air, brushing the wall until it found the flashlight's beam. Then it stopped, pointing directly at me. I backed away until my spine hit the opposite wall. "What do you want?" I whispered. The hand withdrew. Silence again. Then my phone buzzed. My phone in my pocket this time. Another text from the unknown number. "Look up." I did. The ceiling was whole again. No hole, no hand, just a faint circle of soot. Then the lights blinked back on. Full power. I was standing in my own apartment. The hallway door wide open. I must have blacked out, right? Imagined it. But when I looked down, the other phone was still in my hand. Only now it was showing a new message on the cracked screen. "See you next Halloween." I dropped it. It hit the floor and shattered completely. For a long time I just stood there, listening to the wind outside. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I even laughed a little, nervous, tired. Then someone knocked on my door. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. My laughter died instantly. I didn't open it. I didn't move. After a few minutes, I convinced myself to peek through the peephole. The corridor was empty, except for a single flickering light over 9B. And under that light, leaning against the wall, was the same cracked phone, screen glowing. Camera pointed straight at my door. I haven't touched it. But every night since, exactly at 10:31 p.m., I hear the same rhythm, 3 pause 2, echoing from somewhere deep in the walls. Sometimes it sounds like it's coming from inside my room. You ever look into a mirror too long and feel like the reflection's just a little off? Like it's studying you, not copying you? That's how it started for me. It was late, a few nights before Halloween. My roommate Kevin had gone out for his night shift, and I was alone in our new apartment, a small, cheap place we found online that looked better in pictures than it did in real life. Old pipes, paper-thin walls, and mirrors, so many mirrors, one in every room, even in the hallway. The landlord said they made the place feel bigger. They didn't. They just made it feel like someone was always watching. I remember sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone when I heard it. a faint tapping sound coming from the bathroom. Not loud, not random, rhythmic, like someone tapping on glass with a fingernail. I muted the TV. The tapping stopped. Then, just as I leaned back, tap, tap, tap. I got up, grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and walked toward the sound. The bathroom door was half open, light off. I pushed it wider and froze. The mirror above the sink was fogged up. Not from steam, I hadn't showered, just a single foggy handprint in the center. Fresh. I wiped it with a towel. The glass cleared. Nothing behind me, just my own reflection, staring back, a little pale from the flashlight glare. Then I noticed something small. My reflection's hand dropped half a second after mine. I blinked, leaned closer. "Okay, that's not funny," I whispered. The reflection blinked again, this time before I did. I stumbled backward, heart racing. I killed the flashlight and turned the bathroom light on. Bright white light filled the room, chasing the shadows away. The mirror looked normal again. I laughed nervously, blaming it on exhaustion. I'd been up editing videos for 2 nights straight. Sleep deprivation does weird things. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. I closed the bathroom door and went back to the living room. Put on some music, scrolled social media, tried to focus. Then I caught movement just at the edge of my vision. The hallway mirror. It looked like someone had just walked past. Someone tall. "Kevin?" I called out. Silence. My chest tightened. He wasn't home. I knew that. He never got off before 3 a.m. I stood up slowly, staring down the hall. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the fridge. I took a step forward. The mirror reflected the hallway perfectly. The rug, the light switch, but no me. My reflection was gone. I waved my arm. Nothing. Then, from the mirror's surface, a shape leaned forward. It looked like me, but the smile wasn't mine. It was stretched too wide, like someone trying to remember how to look human. I couldn't move. My reflection tilted its head slowly, studying me like I was the one behind glass. Then, it lifted a finger and pointed. Not at me, but past me. I turned. The bathroom door was open again. Inside, the light flickered. I ran to the door, slammed it shut, locked it. Then I pressed my back against the wall, breathing hard. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Kevin texting, "Hey, did you just call me?" I hadn't. Before I could reply, another message popped up. A photo, my bathroom mirror, taken from the inside. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor and slid under the couch. My mind was screaming at me to leave, to get out, but my legs wouldn't move. I just stood there staring at that hallway mirror, waiting for something else to move. Minutes passed. Nothing. I tried to calm myself, told myself maybe it was a prank. Maybe Kevin somehow had a camera, though I knew that made no sense. I forced myself to pick up my phone. The photo was gone. No messages from Kevin. The chat was empty. That's when the lights flickered, just once, and I saw myself in every mirror, except the one in the hallway. That reflection was still smiling. Slowly, it raised its hand and pressed its palm against the inside of the glass. I couldn't explain why, but I lifted my own hand toward it. When our palms aligned, the glass was warm. It pulsed, faintly, like a heartbeat. I yanked my hand away and ran for the door. The lock wouldn't turn. I twisted harder. It felt like someone on the other side was holding it. Then, in the hallway mirror, my reflection mouthed a word, "Stay." The lock clicked open. I bolted. Down the stairs barefoot, didn't even grab my keys. When I reached the lobby, the night guard looked up, startled. "Everything okay?" he asked. I couldn't even speak. He handed me a cup of water and I told him what I saw. The reflection, The photo, the delay. He frowned. Apartment 304, right? I nodded. He sighed, rubbing his temple. You didn't hear about the last tenant, huh? Moved out last Halloween, said the mirrors kept copying her wrong. I stared at him, hoping he was joking. He wasn't. I stayed downstairs till morning. When I finally went back up, sunlight spilled into the hallway. Everything looked normal, except the hallway mirror. Someone had written across it in smeared handprints. See you tonight. I covered every mirror in the apartment with bed sheets that day, even the tiny one in my phone case. Kevin laughed when I told him. You're losing it, man, he said. It's just glass. But that night, around 2:47 a.m., I woke up to the sound of rustling. The sheet over the hallway mirror was moving. Something underneath it pressed outward. Slow and deliberate. A voice whispered from behind the fabric. Let me finish the reflection, I screamed. Ripped the sheet down, and the mirror was empty. No reflection, just a smooth black surface that swallowed the light. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. 2 days later, Kevin quit his job and moved out. He wouldn't tell me why, just said, that mirror smiled at me last night. I moved a week after, but no matter where I go, I woke up to the sound of whispering, soft, rhythmic, almost like breathing. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, that strange, echoing half-conscious world where everything feels real but doesn't make sense. But then I realized it was coming from the corner of my bedroom. I blinked in the dark. My eyes adjusted and there it was, the baby monitor. The tiny green light on it pulsed every time the voice spoke. But there was no baby in my apartment. I froze. My roommate had moved out 3 weeks ago. I didn't even own a baby monitor, yet there it was, sitting on my dresser. A small white monitor with a thin antenna, like something from the early 2000s, the kind parents used before everything went digital. I pushed myself up slowly, my heart already pounding. The whispering continued, muffled, low, but it was definitely a voice. Then, clear as a breath right next to my ear, it said my name. Eli. Every hair on my body stood up. The voice wasn't robotic or distant, it was human. It had texture, warmth, familiarity. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Then the monitor crackled again. Eli, don't get up. That was enough. I bolted upright, scanning the room. My door was half open. Beyond it, the hallway was pitch black. No sound, no movement. I grabbed my phone. 3:12 a.m. I turned on the flashlight, pointing it at the monitor. Nothing unusual. Just a plastic box with a speaker. The light on it blinked twice, then stopped. Silence. I reached toward it, hesitated, then yanked the power cord from the wall. The green light faded, but the whisper didn't stop. It kept going, just faintly now, like it was behind the wall. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the edge of my bed. My apartment was small, 1 bedroom, 1 hall, and a living area. There wasn't room for someone to hide, unless my eyes drifted to the vent on the wall above the dresser. The voice had said, "Don't get up," and now it was coming from inside the vent. I swallowed hard. I should have left right then, grabbed my keys and walked out, but I didn't. I told myself it was interference, someone nearby using an old radio frequency. That made sense, right? Except I didn't live near anyone. My building was practically empty. Half the apartments were under renovation. Still, I forced myself to move closer. The whispering grew clearer. "Come back to bed, Eli." My flashlight shook in my hand. The vent was maybe 4 feet up. I dragged over a chair and climbed on it. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. I leaned closer. The metal grill was cold against my fingers. The air smelled dusty, old, like something had been sitting in there for years. Then, Right behind the vent, something moved, a soft scraping sound, and then another whisper. "You shouldn't have looked." I stumbled backward off the chair, hit the floor hard, and my phone light flickered out. Total darkness. For a second I thought I saw movement, a faint silhouette shifting behind the slats of the vent. I ran, out of the room, through the hallway into the living area. My hands fumbled for the light switch. When it came on, the entire apartment flooded with pale yellow light. Everything looked normal. Too normal. But then I saw it. On the coffee table right beside my keys, another baby monitor, identical. Its light was already on. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even seen it before. The voice returned, calm now, almost amused. "You moved." I froze where I stood. The monitor's speaker crackled, then something tapped on the other side of the wall. Slow, deliberate, like knuckles, tap, tap, tap. Then the front door handle rattled. Every instinct in me screamed not to make a sound. I killed the light and crouched behind the couch. The handle rattled again, harder this time. Then a low scraping, like someone dragging a finger down the metal. The monitor hissed softly. Then the voice whispered, "Let me in, Eli. It's cold." I wanted to yell, to tell it to stop, but my voice caught in my throat. I waited, motionless. After maybe 30 seconds, the noise stopped. I reached for my phone, turned on the flashlight again, and crept to the door. The peephole showed nothing, just the dim hallway light flickering at the far end. I unlocked the bolt. Slowly. I don't know why I did it. Maybe to prove to myself that nobody was there, that I wasn't losing it. I cracked the door open an inch. Silence. Then, something whispered from the other side. "Behind you." I slammed the door shut and stumbled back, hitting the wall. My phone dropped from my hand and skittered across the floor. The monitor flared to life again. That static hiss now sharp, urgent, and beneath it, breathing, heavy, wet, close. It was coming from the bedroom. I edged forward, barely breathing. The light from the monitor pulsing in the dark like a heartbeat. Every blink of green made the shadows shift, crawl. When I reached the doorway, I saw it. The vent cover was open, hanging loose by one screw. The metal edges glistened faintly, and something inside moved. I raised my phone light. Just for a second, and caught the glint of an eye. Human. Watching me. The whisper came again, not from the monitor this time, but directly from the vent. I said, "Don't get up." I ran. Out the front door, down the stairs, barefoot, my breath scraping in my throat. I didn't stop until I reached the parking lot. I called the building manager from the car. He thought I was delirious. Came by the next morning with a maintenance guy. They opened the vent. Nothing. Just dust, wires, insulation. No space big enough for anyone to hide. But they did find something else. A speaker. Small, old, wired into the duct system. It wasn't connected to anything now, just an empty power line. The manager said it must have been left over from an old security system. I wanted to believe that. But when I packed my things that day, I found one more thing in the kitchen, on the counter. Beside my coffee mug, a third baby monitor, still plugged in, and scrawled across the back of it, in faded marker, were 3 words: "You got up." It started at 2:47 a.m. That's the exact time the first flicker hit the screen. I was sitting in the security booth of the old Kingsley office complex. 12 floors of empty hallways and flickering exit lights. The building had been half vacant since 2018, but they still hired night guards because, apparently, no one wanted to risk vandals breaking into the place. I didn't mind the job. It was quiet and the pay wasn't bad. But lately the silence had started to feel heavier, like the walls were listening. My name's Mark, by the way. I've worked nights my whole life, but nothing, and I mean nothing, has ever messed with my head the way that night did. I was watching the monitors cycling through the feeds like always. Camera 1, lobby. Camera 2, elevator bank. Camera 3, parking garage. Camera 6, east corridor. That's when I noticed it. Camera 6 flashed for half a second. Static. Then it came back, except the timestamp on it wasn't 2:47. It said 2:53. Minutes in the future. I squinted, leaning closer. The footage looked normal. Same hallway, same flickering fluorescent lights. But then, from the far end of the corridor, a figure walked into frame. Uniform, cap, flashlight. Me. It was me, walking down the hallway 3 minutes from now. I froze. Watched the screen. My double moved slowly, scanning the walls, just like I usually did on patrol. The second hand on the timestamp ticked forward, matching my real clock exactly, except 3 minutes ahead. I looked at my watch. 2:48. I told myself it was a glitch, maybe a playback loop or delay. But the guy on screen turned his head suddenly, like he'd heard something behind him. The movement was too natural. Too real. I glanced down at my monitor controls. None of the cameras were set to record playback. All live feeds. I switched to camera 5. Nothing. Camera 6 again. There I was, still walking. Now closer to the corner I watched, unable to move, as the future me reached the end of the hallway and turned left. The timestamp clicked to 2:50. Then the screen went black. I sat back, heartbeat loud in my ears. My coffee trembled on the desk beside me. I waited, watching my own clock hit 2:50. Nothing happened. I stared at the hallway feed, empty. No one there, a trick of the system, I thought. Maybe the DVR lagged or spliced an old patrol recording. I almost laughed at myself for getting spooked. But then, from somewhere in the building, I heard footsteps, faint, steady, coming from the east corridor, exactly where I'd just seen myself. I grabbed my flashlight and keys, flicked on the radio and called it in. "Dispatch, this is Kingsley Knight. Hearing movement on east corridor. Could be trespassers. Static." No reply. I tried again. Nothing. "Fine," I muttered and stepped out of the booth. The hallway smelled faintly of dust and cold metal, the kind of stale air you only get in old buildings. My boots echoed off the tiles as I moved. I reached the east corridor and lifted the flashlight. Empty. I started down the hall, my light bouncing across the walls. That's when the elevator dinged behind me. I turned fast. Too fast, the light slicing through empty space. The elevator doors stood open, but no one was inside. I checked my watch. 2:52, 2 minutes from the moment I'd seen on the screen. My throat went dry. I aimed the light back down the hallway and froze. At the far end, a shape was standing there, tall, still, wearing my uniform. The beam caught the silver badge glinting on its chest. The exact same as mine. "Hey," I called, voice cracking slightly. "Who's there?" It didn't answer. It just started walking toward me, slow, measured. I took a step back. "This isn't funny, man. You need to stop." But the thing, the other me, kept coming. Each footstep echoed mine. Perfectly. The flashlight flickered. For a split second, the figure vanished, and when the light came back, it was closer, maybe 20 feet away. I lifted my radio again. "Dispatch, come in. There's someone in the east wing." The radio hissed, then clicked off by itself. The figure stopped and smiled. It was my face, but wrong. The expression didn't fit. The smile was too wide, too slow. My heart was slamming in my chest. I turned and ran. The hallway lights above me flickered as I sprinted back toward the lobby. My boot slipped once on the tile, sending a jolt of panic through me, but I didn't stop. Behind me, I could hear it, running, in perfect sync with my own footsteps. I hit the corner and burst into the lobby, breathing hard. The glass doors rattled slightly from the force of my arrival. I turned back. The corridor was empty. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the vending machine and the faint buzz of the lights overhead. Then, behind the front desk monitor, camera 6 flickered on again. I moved closer. The timestamp now said 2:56, and on the screen, I saw myself sitting in the security booth, staring at the monitors, but I wasn't in the booth. I was standing in front of the monitors. Then, in the footage, future me looked up right into the camera and smiled. I spun toward the booth, heart racing. The chair inside was empty, but still spinning. I don't remember getting outside. One second I was in the booth, the next I was standing in the parking lot, cold air burning my lungs. The lights inside the building flickered like a strobe. Every window reflected something different, sometimes the empty hallway, sometimes me, watching myself from angles that didn't exist. The cops came at dawn, said I'd had some kind of breakdown. The footage on the security drives, all static, every single file corrupted. But here's the thing that keeps me awake. When they showed me the still image they'd pulled, just one frame that survived the wipe, I knew what it was instantly. It was me, sitting at the booth, except my reflection in the monitor behind me was still smiling. And the timestamp? 2:57, 3 minutes ahead. I quit that job the next day. But sometimes, when I check my home security camera feed late at night, I'll catch a flicker, a face that looks just like mine, sitting 3 minutes into the future, and every time it's smiling a little wider,